Over at 97.3 ESPN.com, John McMullen has 5 on the Lions. We'll get his pick and more as John. Yesterday was crazy, and today it has gotten wild with some of the stuff that is coming out of the NovaCare Center. Don't know if you were at practice today or not, but some interesting names on the injury report as well. So first off, I'll welcome you in and say happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you, Mike. It's not very, very happy for Chip Kelly. It seems like people are piling on at this point.
It's also his birthday today.
It is.
Chipper. Were you at the NovaCare complex today?
No, there's no media access today, and they went through a really irregular practice, so that's why it's a concern. It wasn't a walkthrough. The Eagles don't do things as we often talk about, as typically as other NFL teams. And so it was a full practice, and then they have to travel and go to Detroit. And by the way, that's one of those issues that everyone's talking about, these wild gesticulations and schedule that are just not normal around this league, especially the veteran players. These are the kinds of things that may not be important to fans or they don't realize. But once you stop having success, people start to question, why are we doing it this way? And I think that's what you're kind of seeing that's going on in the Eagles locker room.
Yes, the report from NJ.com, John, I'll start there with that. Lost the locker room. The loyalty's gone. Injured players won't play for him. I don't want to say injured. Guys who are hurt. There's a difference between being injured and guys being hurt. Guys who are hurt that maybe can try to give it a go, they don't want to play now. Your thoughts on that NJ.com report?
Well, the theory is that by bringing in high-priced players that don't have a loyalty to this particular program, and we always point to Jeremy Maclin. We did that on Tuesday. I think it's always prudent to reward your own rather than letting one of your own go and paying somebody else who hasn't been in this culture. And I think that's the kind of thing. But I go back to Adam Schefter's report, and I think this is all speculation. And I don't see any evidence that the effort has turned down. I don't see any evidence that people are backstabbing the head coach at this point. I think it's really speculation. People are blowing, and people have been hard on me for criticizing Chip Kelly. You know that, Mike. And I'm going to turn and I'm going to start defending him here. I think this is getting to the point of ridiculousness. I really do.
Well, I guess, and John, in that report, it came from reportedly an agent that basically has said, look, my guy doesn't, he doesn't want his name mentioned in this because he's afraid that there could be repercussions. But, I guess if that's coming from an agent and there's legitimate quotes behind it, that's not good.
No, but realize agents obviously always have a skin in the game, so to speak, and they're trying to frame things to their players, best to put them in the best possible light as possible. So you always take things coming from agents with a grain of salt, and that's where a lot of the news comes from. There's no doubt about that. And the fact that you have somebody on record putting a quote, and it's obviously not good for Chip Kelly. But again, I think this is what losing does to an organization. And I think winning can cure all these ills. And I think winning tomorrow will cure a lot of these ills. I really do, because this team is still relevant. We know why they're relevant. They're only relevant because the NFC East is that bad. We understand that. But one win against a very bad Detroit team turns this whole thing around again, and you're not going to hear all these stories. So the fact that everyone is taking a quote and taking a frustrated player and then taking that to the next level where Chip Kelly can't come back from this, I think is specious reasoning. I really do. And I think it borders on just unrealistic overreaction. And I'm stunned, to be to be honest, at this point.
Well, and I'm a little surprised as well. John, you've been covering the NFL for a long time on a national level, here locally. I don't remember it turning on a guy this fast. I mean, Andy, yeah, there were people who were tired of him, but even when you were tired of him, it wasn't, in my opinion, like this. This, to me, was just a ambush of emotions switched over in a matter of almost 48 hours.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is where I'll criticize Chip Kelly, and I often say it. People can take it any way they want. The fact that he keeps everyone at arm's length, the fact that he treats people the way he does, and it could be a media member, it could be Brandon Boykin, whoever, it's just not something you should do for this simple reason. When things do go bad, they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's what you're seeing going on here. This is how he treats people, and then when things go poorly, they have a reason to say, okay, I can jump and I can take shots at him and do these things. And that's why I've always advocated for every NFL head coach, not only Chip Kelly, you should embrace not only your players, not only your locker room, you should try to get very close to them. Andy Reid's a perfect example. Those players had his back to the very, very end. And then the same tack, you should embrace. You should slap the backs of the media occasionally. I respect Joe Torre in Major League Baseball. He was perhaps the best ever at it, where he would use first names and made everybody feel good, and everybody gave Joe Torre the benefit of the doubt. That's where Chip Kelly's gone off the rails. And whether he realizes or not, it's making his job much more difficult. And that's my biggest problem with Chip Kelly, is the fact that he doesn't adjust when something doesn't go according to plan.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. I want to get to another report that was out there. I don't know if you saw this one. They seem to be coming in from all angles, John. A former Oregon player has come out and basically said, I was wondering if he would adjust. Hasn't happened. Can't do this to pro players. It's easy to do when kids are coming out of high school and they don't know any better, but these guys are making money, and if it's not working, you got to make some adjustments. And here we go. I wonder if he would change a bit in the NFL, but it sounds like he hasn't. He's stubborn. He's married to his system. His style worked when we were all fresh out of high school, and you didn't know any better, didn't have anything. Now, these are grown men with salaries, and if you're going to tell them that many of them need to do things on the field they have no experience doing, being cute with that offense, you better be winning. He is not Belichick. You start to hear things like that from other players. Do you question Kelly's coaching then? If they're watching from afar saying, man, he's not making any adjustments. We did this when we were in Oregon, and now it's not working. You got to make some changes. So what do you say to that quote?
No, I think that's fair, and we've been talking about that for months. This is a guy who's a slave to his scheme, and that's not the way to become a great coach in this league. And he's not Bill Belichick, but few are. So I kind of throw that part out of the equation. But the best coaches in this league are the ones that take a look at what they have on their roster and they tweak things and they mask as many deficiencies as possible. And that's what Chip Kelly's not good at. He is a slave to his scheme. And we've seen it with other coaches. Most notably, I think you look at the Tampa 2 coaches and how things went downward for them when teams around the league kind of adjusted offensively, how poorly things went for them. If you just go with one scheme and you don't turn it around and you don't adjust to the adjustments made to you, you're not going to last long in this league. And that's the biggest problem with Chip Kelly as a football coach. The off-the-field stuff, the Oregon stuff, when he was hired and everybody was enthralled with the sports science stuff and the sleep monitors and the smoothies, I wrote when that came out, talking specifically about the sleep studies, I said that's not going to go over well in this league because people look at that as an invasion of privacy. The NFLPA is not going to like it, and they're going to fight it at some point. And I think you're seeing that come to a head. And again, it all comes down to winning and losing. If you're winning, nobody cares about anything. But if you're losing, people start complaining, and they say, I don't want to wear this sleep monitor. I don't want to get 9 hours of sleep. I'm a professional. Like the anonymous quote said, I can do what I want on my free time. And that's how players feel, and they don't want to be treated like 18-year-old kids. So that part of it, I've always agreed with wholeheartedly.
John, there's so much to dissect with this team moving forward. How much of an indicator do you think tomorrow is about all of these opinions and reports and anonymous this and that? How much of tomorrow do you feel is an indicator of how much validity a lot of this stuff has?
Well, I think you're going to see if it has validity or not, because the only way it does is they go in Detroit and don't play for Chip Kelly and get beat 35-7. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think this team's going to play well. It's a bad football team. Let me rephrase that. Not necessarily well, but well enough to certainly be in the game. I don't think they're going to get blown off the field again like they did in Tampa Bay. I think there's going to be a prideful aspect. And I don't think it's going to tell you much about this team, because this team is mediocre. There's only so much they can do at this point, but they're going to be relevant in the NFC East. And I think a lot of this criticism, not specifically the Oregon player's quote to Sports Illustrated, because I think that has a lot of legitimacy, but the other stuff, I don't think it has a lot of, and I think it's people piling on because the team is losing right now. And I think you're going to see it tomorrow. I think they're going to be, win or lose, they're going to at least show up and play for Chip Kelly and play for the uniform and play for the name on the back of the uniform. I don't think you're going to see a team that completely gives up, and I think that'll say a lot to the point of people are just piling on.
All right, well, let's look at the game a little bit then. Bradford or Sanchez? Yesterday you felt it was going to be Sanchez. Today Bradford was listed as questionable. He has been cleared by a neurologist. The shoulder really seems to be the issue, but he has cleared to return. It looks like that Chip Kelly wants to keep him guessing. But if Kelly wants to win the football game, does he play Bradford, or does he think that Sanchez gives him a better shot to win right now? I mean, what is the psychology behind picking this quarterback right now?
Well, I think he's doing the right thing as far as competitive advantage, and you hold it off as long as possible. And Sam practiced fully today, so he's ready to go. So I think more than anything else, this will tell you what Chip Kelly really, really thinks about Sam Bradford. Because if he really thinks Sam Bradford's a good quarterback and a quarterback that can lead this offense, then he starts, and there's no question that. If he doesn't, I think it tells you all you need to know about Sam Bradford. And no matter what we think of Chip Kelly moving forward, if Sam Bradford does not start tomorrow in Detroit, you know the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have a new quarterback next season. I thought that's a done deal for weeks, but others are still teetering on that. It is unquestionable. If he does not start tomorrow, he has no future in Philadelphia.
Interesting comments. John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. So if he does not play tomorrow, obviously, it seems like it would be shaky at best for him to return. But, if Sanchez plays well, then does that say that he plays again against the Patriots? Or, do they just want to be safe with Bradford?
I don't think it's about safe, because he's cleared from the concussion protocol. We've talked about it, the shoulder issue. It's on his non-throwing shoulder. Plenty of quarterbacks have played with that same injury. And Sam Bradford himself, we've talked about, remembers playing for a contract, whether it's here or somewhere else, so he wants to play. I think any talk of that kind of thing is just trying to spin it from the coaching staff and try to spin it in a positive direction, that they don't want to lose Sam Bradford in case they have to go back to him. If he doesn't start, as I said, it's a clear indication that Chip Kelly has no confidence in him moving forward, and he wants Mark Sanchez to succeed. Whether that happens or not is a completely different issue, but it'll be clear that he wants Mark Sanchez to take control of this job.
All right, John, a couple other injuries. Zach Ertz will not play. I thought something that stood out with Pat Shurmur yesterday. He said if Ertz can't play, it's safe to say we would veer a little bit more towards 11. You don't think that's a great game plan typically when they go from 12 to 11 personnel?
No, it's not, and that's my biggest concern because I picked the Eagles to win the game, but obviously without Zach Ertz it becomes more difficult, and that's the reason why, because you're going to see more of the 3 wide receiver sets on the field. Perhaps it's a little bit better because Aguilar's healthier and he can handle a lot of snaps, and Josh Huff can get out there, and you don't have Miles Austin on the field nearly as much. But we've talked about it all year. There's no good options at the wide receiver position for the Philadelphia Eagles. But everybody's banged up this time of year. It's not just the Eagles. Look around the league. You know, the Patriots are the perfect example. They're undefeated, and they keep getting major injury after major injury after major injury. You have to overcome things like this, especially against bad football teams like the Lions.
Jason Kelce has popped up on the injury report. Haven't heard a lot about it. Didn't practice today. Didn't practice yesterday. Number one, who's the backup center? Who would start in that situation? Number two, I know you've been tough on Kelce, but what kind of disaster would occur if he can't play?
Yeah, I don't think amazing that we would say this, but I don't think it's that big of an issue. That's how poorly he's played. And it's come out of nowhere. Josh Andrews would start. I'm not trying to say that that's a good development for the Eagles. They still need Jason Kelce, and they hope he plays certainly, and they need him to play well. But if you were to say that before the season started that the Eagles weren't going to have Jason Kelce for a game, you might have went into panic mode. But it's just not that way now because he's played that poorly this season. And it would just be another hiccup for an offensive line that's been just every week it's something else. Its injury starts with Gardner, and then it's Peters and people ping-ponging back and forth, Lane Johnson. And Jason himself, Peters, is questionable too. So we have no idea what that offensive line is going to look like. And the one strength of the Detroit Lions defensively is that front, specifically Ziggy Ansah, who's one of the best pass rushers in this league, and also Haloti Ngata, who's still a pretty good nose tackle despite being on the wrong side of 30. So that's something to keep an eye on, the offensive line. But it always is with the Eagles because when they play well, that's when they win. And they haven't played well all that much this season.
Boy, there's a lot here, too. By the way, let me get your opinion on this. There was the agent suggested that his player would not play hurt. Do you have an idea in your mind who that may have been?
Well, I mean, we can all speculate, and this is just pure speculation, but I think the most notable, because things have not gone well for him, would be DeMarco Murray. People are also speculating Darren Sproles because he's been so ill-tempered recently about his role in this offense. And then, as weird as it sounds, who knows? Maybe it's Jason Kelce because this came out of nowhere, this knee injury. But he's always been a leader in that locker room, and he's always stood behind Chip Kelly and kind of towed the line. So right now, everyone's trying to pick who the most logical person it would be. And the problem is, perhaps the biggest problem is there's too many logical people that it could be. And maybe that's the biggest thing of all that Chip Kelly is fighting. But I think it all stops with a win in Detroit. I think this is just.
So you think this is all blows over and everything's peachy keen if they beat the Lions tomorrow?
Well, I don't think it's peachy keen, but I don't think anybody's talking this way next week. I mean, this is not a very good football team. I'm not trying to say it is. But to to say that Chip Kelly is not capable of being the head coach of this team moving forward because of 2 losses that they shouldn't have lost, I think is the same overreaction that some of these pundits had after Game 3 of the preseason in Green Bay, where they overreacted and called this team a Super Bowl contender. I think it's the same people. I really do. And I think it's overreaching. I think it's overreaction. A lot of it is to say, look at me, to be perfectly blunt. And I just don't think a lot of it is steeped in reality. If you look at any team in the NFL, when they start losing, people will start chirping. That's just the nature of this game. It always has been that way. It always will be that way. And the Eagles are no different. And certainly Chip Kelly is no different.
John, give me a couple. Your 5 on the Lions is up at 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll get your pick on the game in just a minute. Plus, I want to take a quick look at the obviously the Cowboys play tomorrow as well. Give me a quick thoughts on the Lions. We talked to Jim Brandstatter earlier. They won 2 in a row. They went to Green Bay and won. They beat the Raiders last week. He said, look, their problem has been on offense. They stopped the run pretty well. So that sounds like a team that Philadelphia sounds a lot like Philadelphia, a team that's been good on defense, problems on offense. So what kind of matchup is this for Philly?
Well, they can't run the football, so that's something the Eagles are going to really enjoy. They average about 71 yards a game running the football, dead last in the NFL, and obviously Doug Martin tripled that himself against the Eagles last week. So the fact that they get a breather, I think this is an opportunity for guys like Kiko Alonso and D'Amico Ryans to get back on the right track because the Lions, because of their offensive line, there's no real talent in the backfield. Amir Abdullah's a rookie. He's great in space, but he can't run between the tackles at all. So this is an opportunity for those players to get a little hot and start feeling better about themselves. That's number one. Offensively, the biggest issue is obviously Calvin Johnson isn't what he once was. We all know that. But they have 2 very good receivers with Johnson and Golden Tate. And what Detroit has done since changing offensive coordinators is they've gone to a lot of max protection because they have a very poor offensive line. And those guys are good enough to get open on their own. And we've seen how the Eagles have struggled with 50-50 balls in prior games, and nobody does that better than Calvin Johnson. So that's my biggest concern about stopping that offense is the fact that the receivers could be an issue. Defensively, he's right. The defense is not bad at all, especially the front 7. Talked about Ziggy Ansah. He's one of the great pass rushers in this league. Nada. They missed DeAndre Levy, who's a great 3-down linebacker. He's not there. But overall, it's a pretty good unit. And the Eagles are going to struggle offensively, but they struggle offensively against everyone. Every
week, yeah. All right, John, before we get your pick, I want to get your thoughts. To me, the line on that game between Dallas and Carolina is a slap in the Panthers' face. To me, that if I'm Carolina, I'm going out there to not only win the game, but to show everybody, how dare you, I'm 10-0, and you're making me a pick against that garbage 3-7 outfit. Give me your thoughts on that, Carolina playing Dallas tomorrow. To me, that's a joke.
Well, I don't agree with you because it's not a garbage outfit with Tony Romo back on the field. I think it's a completely different team.
Oh, I agree with that. But you're almost giving no credence to what Carolina has done for 10 games.
Yeah, I'm surprised. They should be a 1 or 2 point favorite for what they've done. But it shows you the respect people in Vegas have for Tony Romo, and they should, and people around the league should, because he makes that much of a difference for that Cowboys team. And as he gets back in the swing of things, it's only going to get better. Obviously, Carolina has a better football team defensively. They are one of the better teams, certainly in the NFC and really all of the NFL. And we've talked about the lack of skill position talent. Something that could show up is their long snappers having issues, and they've had to sign somebody. So it could be a special teams play that hurts Carolina in this game. And I'm going to make a bold prediction and say the Panthers are no longer undefeated after Thanksgiving.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Get out of here. All right. John, give me your pick for the Eagles and the Lions tomorrow.
I have the Eagles win at a very, very close game, 23-21, but it could go either way. I just think both of these are bad football teams at the end of the day. The lines are just a little bit worse. But give Jim Caldwell credit. I mean, this team was 1-7, and some of the same things were being said. The Lions fired their general manager. They fired their team president. They fired their offensive coordinator. People were saying Jim Caldwell's a dead man walking, very similar to what's going on in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden they go out and win 2 games. So that's kind of the things I was talking about before about Chip Kelly. This happens all over. It's what losing breeds. It's not rare, and that's why I think some people are overreacting.
All right, that's tomorrow right here on 97.3. Happy Thanksgiving, John.